The autumn evening was still warm on the University of the Pacific campus in September 1979. Students were settling into their first days of the semester, filled with excitement and possibilities. For 18-year-old Catina Salarno, it was the beginning of her journey toward becoming a dentist, a dream she had held close for years. But as darkness fell across the campus that night, Catina's dreams would be violently extinguished. At 9:45 p.m., freshman Kevin Arlen was taking a walk when he spotted something on the sidewalk, something that didn't belong there. As he moved closer, the shape became clearer. A young woman lying motionless on the ground, a pool of blood forming around her head. She was still alive, Kevin would later recall, his voice breaking slightly. She was unconscious, but there was a big pool of blood around her head. Her arms were twisted in a way I never thought the human body could twist. While Kevin and a resident advisor waited for an ambulance, a young man returned to his dorm room across campus. He casually laid down on his bed, propped up a pillow, and began watching Monday Night Football with his roommate. Nothing in his demeanor suggested he had just committed the unthinkable. That young man was Stephen Burns, the boy from across the street who had been part of the Salarno family for years. The boy they had welcomed into their home, whom Catina's father had mentored. The boy Catina had dated since 10th grade, and now the boy who had put a bullet in the back of her head. A perfect family shattered. Miles away in San Francisco, Harriet and Mike Salarno were preparing for bed when the phone rang. Mike answered. Something in his tone made Harriet freeze. "What's wrong?" she asked, fear gripping her heart. "Catina has been shot and she's in the emergency room," he replied. Their two younger daughters, Regina and Nina, rushed to their parents, outside. Then came the call that would forever divide their lives into before and after. "Your daughter passed away." I don't think it can be described in words, what it's like to watch your mom collapse, crying, Nina would later say, her eyes distant with the memory. "My dad, a very, very strong man, but you could tell he was shaken to the core." Regina, just 18 months younger than Catina, put it more starkly. "Life just stopped. Life stopped. Completely stopped." Catina Rose Salarno had been pronounced dead at 9 minutes after midnight. The promising freshman, described by her sisters as the heart and soul of the family, had been alive for just one day of college. The boy across the street. The Salarnos had been the picture of a middle-class American family. 3 beautiful daughters, devoted parents who served their community as juvenile commissioners, and a home filled with love. Summer days at their cabin in the mountains. Sisters giggling and making cookies together. A life blessed with happiness and purpose. When the Burns family moved in across the street, the Salarno girls had spied on them curiously, before marching over with homemade cookies to welcome them. Among the Burns children was Stephen, a handsome athlete who would soon become Catina's high school boyfriend. "He was the big brother I never had," Regina remembered. "I just thought he was great. I loved Steve. I idolized him," added Nina, who bonded with him over sports. "He was a great athlete. He coached my teams. He would help me with my shot, and he took the time to do that." Mike Salarno, who embraced everyone, took Stephen under his wing. The boy had a difficult relationship with his own father, so Mike mentored him and gave him a job at his TV store. The Salarnos trusted him completely. He became part of their family. But during her senior year of high school, Catina wanted to break things off with Stephen. She had been accepted to the University of the Pacific and was ready for a fresh start. Stephen wasn't having it. She said that Steve said that if I broke up with him, he would kill me, Regina recalled years later. But at the time, neither sister took the threat seriously. We just figured he was just saying it. And because of what our relationship was over the years, why would we believe that? Why indeed would they believe that the boy who loved their family would destroy it? The final betrayal. Catina thought she had left Stephen behind when she arrived at the University of the Pacific. He had said he was going to Santa Clara University, but the Salarnos' excitement quickly turned to dread when they encountered Stephen and his family in their hotel lobby. "What are you doing here?" they asked. "Well, I'm going to UOP," he replied. For the first time, Catina turned to her father for help. Mike confronted Stephen directly. "Leave Catina alone. She has told you that. You guys move on to your own ways, be friends, and know that I will always be here for you." The Salarnos returned to San Francisco, leaving Catina to settle into her new life. Across campus, Stephen's new roommate, Les Serpa, remembers walking into their room and seeing Catina's pictures everywhere. He said his girlfriend was at Pacific as well, Les recalled. There were pictures of her and him together. More pictures than I'd ever seen before, but they were everywhere on his desk. Stephen never mentioned that Catina had wanted to end their relationship. It was all very positive. Everything was great, but everything was far from great. On Catina's first day of classes, Stephen knocked on her dorm room door. After he left, Catina told her roommate Joanne that he wanted to meet with her later that evening, for the last time. She was not looking forward to meeting with him, Joanne would later testify. But she was looking forward to it being the last time. She believed that he would stop bothering her. Stephen came to pick up Catina around 7:45 that evening. As they left, Joanne said, "Have a good evening," but Stephen just grunted in response. Catina told her roommate she would see her later. That later never came. The investigation unfolds as Catina fought for her life in the hospital. Police began piecing together what had happened. They spoke with Catina's roommate, who told them about Stephen's visit. Soon, officers arrived at Stephen's dorm room. "I opened the door and there's like 5 guys out there in suits," Les Serpa recalled. "I could see at the end of each hall was full of police officers. They went through everything, every bag, every drawer. Everything. They were searching for a gun, the murder weapon that was never found." Stephen was taken to the police station, where he maintained he had spent the evening in his dorm room watching Monday Night Football. Without the gun, police didn't have enough evidence to hold him. He was released to his father's custody and taken back to San Francisco, but Harriet Salarno already knew. "I just said to Mike, 'It's Steve, Mike, it's Steve.' I don't know why. I just had that feeling." After talking to the family, police learned about Stephen's threat to kill Catina if she broke up with him. 2 days after the murder, Stephen Burns was arrested at his home, directly across the street from where Catina had grown up. "I remember sitting up in the window, watching them walk him out in handcuffs and putting him in the patrol car," Nina said. "My whole world got taken from me, and really, in the flash of a gun. I mean, everything was gone." The pieces come together as the Salarnos grappled with their devastating loss. They learned that Stephen had stolen a gun from Mike's store weeks before the murder. They came to believe he had been planning to kill Catina even before she left for college. Regina remembered a chilling incident from the night before they took Catina to UOP. "I heard this noise outside, and it was Steve Burns pacing in front of the bedroom window. He had a big white towel wrapped around his left hand." She said Stephen tried to climb up the side of their house and enter through the window of the bedroom the girls shared, but Catina refused to let him in. "Then there was a sound like he fell," Nina added, "and it was a very distinct sound of metal hitting metal." Years later, the sisters would conclude that the sound was a gun, that if they had opened the window that night, there'd be 3 dead girls. 6 months after Catina's death, 19-year-old Stephen Burns went on trial for her murder. It was another cruel blow for the Salarnos to discover that neither of Catina's parents was allowed in the courtroom, not even while 14-year-old Nina testified alone, without support. "I think the best word was just awful," Nina recalled of her time on the stand. "The only person I knew in the courtroom was the guy that had murdered my sister." The prosecution argued that Burns met Catina that night carrying the stolen gun, with the intention of killing her if she wouldn't continue their relationship. Still, the jury did not convict him of premeditated first-degree murder. He was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 17 years to life with the possibility of parole. "We all thought 17 years to life meant life, that they would never let him out," Nina said. "They would learn they were wrong." The fight begins. Just 10 years into his sentence, Stephen Burns came up for parole. The Salarnos were outraged. "I had no idea the parole system was so rotten," Harriet told 48 Hours correspondent Bernard Goldberg in 1990. On March 28, 1990, the Salarnos and a bus full of supporters headed to Stephen Burns' parole hearing. "That bus ride was the longest ride in my life," Mike said. "The first hardest thing was when she died. This is the second." For the first time since Catina's murder, the Salarnos confronted the man they had once considered part of their family. "Steve sentenced my daughter to death forever," Mike told the parole board. "I ask for a fair trade. I ask you to sentence Steve to life in prison." When it was Burns's turn to speak, he offered an apology. "It's hard to say the words how difficult it is to live day to day about the feelings I have inside about what I did. Regardless of what I do, I can't bring Catina back. But I know this, that I am deeply sorry for what I did." But the Salarnos noticed he never looked at them while he spoke. "If you can't look at someone in the face and say you're sorry," Nina observed, "then you know damn well you're not sorry." After an excruciating wait, Stephen Burns was found unsuitable for release. But he would get another chance at freedom in just 2 years. 2 years. We got 2 years, Harriet said, exhausted. "And I feel very, very drained. And I know my family's so worn out." "And in 2 years, what about the Salarno family?" Goldberg asked. "We'll be here," Nina answered firmly. "We'll be back," Mike added. "We'll be back." And back they would come over and over again for the next 35 years. A legacy of purpose. There is one thing you can count on with the Salarnos. Every week for almost 46 years, they have visited the cemetery where Catina rests. These days, there's another grave to tend. Mike Salarno died in 2013 of cancer. There's something else you can be sure of. Every time Stephen Burns comes up for parole, they will be there. "We all said we would be back, and we've continued to be back 12 times, Nina said. "Not just because he murdered Catina, but because he is a dangerous murderer that will kill or harm again. And that's just the bottom line. The fight for victims' rights has shaped all their lives. Regina became a nurse because she swore nobody would die alone. Nina became a prosecutor specializing in domestic violence cases because she believed, like my sister, so many victims are either not heard, afraid to be heard, or just don't understand the magnitude of what's happening to them. Harriet founded Crime Victims United, an organization that has changed hundreds of laws. Before Harriet Salarno, victims in California weren't allowed to give impact statements at sentencing. Now they are. Parents, even if witnesses, can now attend trials. And children, unlike Nina, must now be accompanied by a support person when testifying. "She's my hero," Nina said of her mother. "My absolute hero. It's just so significant to see how she supports people and just really fights for what's right." "I have a passion," Harriet explained simply. "I've been doing it for 45 years and I will continue to do it, as long as I'm alive and as long as he's in prison." The 13th hearing, in January 2025, the Salarnos prepared for their 13th parole hearing with Stephen Burns. At 92, Harriet still went to the office at Crime Victims United every day. Nina, now a district attorney in Matta County, left nothing to chance as she reviewed transcripts from previous hearings. As a prosecutor, Nina knew Burns's chances of getting out were better than ever. At 63, he was eligible for special consideration under the elderly parole program, and the law now required consideration of his youth at the time of the crime. He was only 18 when he murdered Catina. "I am shaky, very shaky," Harriet admitted before the hearing. "I'm afraid of him being released. I'm just afraid that he'll come after us." For nearly 4 hours, the commissioners questioned Stephen Burns, who once again denied he had planned to kill Catina that night. "You didn't plan to kill her?" asked a commissioner. "No," Burns replied. "And you deny that you've threatened to kill her previously, correct?" "Yes." After deliberation, the commissioners returned with their decision. Even after 45 years in prison, we see very little change on those issues that led you to murder Catina, that led you to do things in prison that offended others. We see very little change. Stephen Burns was found unsuitable for parole. "We can go home and really sleep tonight," Harriet exclaimed, a genuine smile finally breaking across her face. 4 days after the hearing, on what would have been Catina's 64th birthday, Nina and Harriet visited the cemetery to deliver the news. "We got a 5-year denial, Dad," Nina said at the grave, "so I'm still holding strong to my promise to you." Then to her sister, "Catina, I think that's the best birthday present we could give you was that denial, so thank you for watching over Mom and watching over everyone." Harriet bent down to touch the headstone. "Happy birthday, Catina. I love you both so much and miss you." Stephen Burns is expected to go before the parole board again in 2030. And just as they have for nearly half a century, the Salarno family will be there, keeping their promise to Catina, whose life was taken but whose legacy continues to protect others. This is more than a story of murder. It's a testament to how tragedy can forge purpose, how grief can fuel change, and how love endures even in the face of unimaginable loss.